If you've ever felt a woman slowly lose respect for you and you couldn't pinpoint when it started, this video is for you. Because here's the hard truth. Women don't accidentally disrespect men. That only happens when a man fails to establish boundaries early enough to prevent it. In the early phases of dating, there are 5 boundaries that decide whether she views you as a man she respects or a man she gradually takes for granted. Miss even one, and you'll find yourself months later confused, overextending, and wondering how the power dynamic flipped. This isn't about being cold, it's not about manipulation, and it's definitely not about controlling women. It's about recognizing the exact moments where men unknowingly surrender leverage, and how to stop doing that before attraction fades into tolerance. If you don't learn these 5 boundaries early, you won't just lose her respect. You'll lose yourself trying to win it back. Most dating advice teaches men how to respond after something goes wrong. This video shows you how to position yourself so nothing goes wrong in the first place. The difference isn't confidence or charm, it's structure. Boundaries create structure, and structure determines who leads the dynamic and who adjusts to it. If you're ready to move from guessing to clarity, like the video and subscribe now. Because once you understand how these dynamics are built, you stop chasing results and start protecting your position. And that shift begins with the first boundary most men ignore. Let's break it down. Number 1, never open financial access before she's earned it. Men often mistake sharing for connection. You think discussing money. You believe you're being open, casual, authentic, but that's not how it's received on the other side. To a woman, early financial details aren't intimacy. They're information. The moment you talk about your income, your savings, your investments, the price of your car, or the trips you plan to take, something subtle yet permanent changes. You stop being a man she's discovering and become a man she's evaluating. Not emotionally, but practically. This is what I call the provider audition. She hasn't chosen you yet. She hasn't committed. She hasn't invested anything. But you're already on display, proving your usefulness. And the most dangerous part is, you usually don't even realize it's happening. You casually mention your salary. You laugh about a bonus. You talk about how much you've put away this year. You think it's just small talk, but in her mind, a silent assessment starts forming. Stability, capacity, access, TNDEC. From that moment on, attraction stops being emotional and starts becoming analytical. And here's the truth most men don't want to face. Once a woman starts assessing your wallet, she stops feeling you. Curiosity turns into calculation. Tension turns into expectation. And no, she doesn't need to ask you for money for this shift to occur. All she has to do is notice how easily you reveal it, how eager you are to show you can provide, how quickly you turn your finances into proof of value. Men do this because they've been taught that providing equals worth, that security equals desirability. But in the early stages, provision doesn't create attraction, it replaces it. You're no longer the man she desires. You become the man she's seeing what she can extract from. That's why this boundary matters so early, because once the frame shifts, it doesn't shift back. You can't talk your way out of being evaluated. You can't charm your way back into mystery. The moment she starts measuring your wallet, attraction stops being emotional and becomes transactional. And when you step in too soon and begin solving her financial stress, something crucial changes, and it's never in your favor. You don't become her partner. You become her support system. That's the role downgrade most men never anticipate. Bans the moment you say, "I've got you," without commitment. You quietly accept responsibility without authority. You offer provision without position, and once that happens, the dynamic solidifies. She may appreciate you, but appreciation isn't desire, gratitude isn't attraction, and this is where the financial tests begin. They're subtle. She brings up how tight money's been recently, a bill that's stressing her out, a car problem that's expensive to fix. She's not directly asking, she's observing. She's watching how fast you react. She's watching whether you feel the urge to save her. She's watching if your boundaries disappear the moment pressure shows up. Most men fail here because they mistake generosity for leadership. They rush in thinking it proves their value. In reality, it proves predictability. And predictable men are easy to slot into utility roles. Blenya, the right boundary doesn't require long explanations or defensiveness. You don't justify yourself. You don't over-explain. You don't apologize. You remain calm. You stay centered. You close the door without slamming it. Something simple, supportive, yet firm. No offer, no guilt, no emotional entanglement. And here's what surprises most men. A woman who's genuinely interested will respect this immediately. Not because she's testing you less, but because she feels safer with a man who protects his structure. A woman with unclear intentions will feel irritated. She may distance herself. She may lose interest. That's not a loss. That's filtration. This boundary doesn't repel women. It filters out the ones who were never interested in you, only in what you could provide. Leadership begins where access is controlled. Number 2, never tolerate disrespect, especially when it's subtle. Most men believe disrespect looks obvious. Raised voices, insults, open hostility. That's why they miss it when it actually matters. Because real disrespect doesn't announce itself. It slips in quietly and waits to see if you'll stop it. Benj, it shows up when she cuts you off mid-sentence and keeps talking. When she makes a passive joke at your expense and follows it with, "Relax, I'm just kidding." When she casually compares you to her ex. When she ignores your messages for hours but expects immediate replies from you. None of these moments feel serious enough to confront, and that's exactly why they work. Banned from a psychological standpoint, this isn't cruelty, it's evaluation. She's asking one silent question: can I get away with this? Women test boundaries the same way water tests cracks. Slowly, gradually, one small push at a time. If nothing pushes back, the pressure increases. Here's a situation most men recognize but rarely address. You're out with her and a group of friends. Everyone's laughing, talking. Someone asks how things are going between you two. She smirks and says something like, "He's fine." When he's not being clueless, her friends laugh. She laughs too. You smile. You tell yourself it's harmless. You assume she didn't mean it that way, but something just happened. She lowered your status in public. She used you as entertainment. And more importantly, she watched what you did next. Banned disrespect tests aren't about the comment. They're about your response or your silence. When you let it slide, you're not being laid back. You're signaling that your self-respect is negotiable. That comfort matters more to you than boundaries. And once a woman realizes she can step over you without consequence, she will. Not because she's cruel, but because you showed her the line wasn't there. Silence isn't composure. Silence is permission. That's the mistake men make when they convince themselves that saying nothing makes them look calm, mature, unaffected. In reality, the message you're sending is much simpler and far more damaging. You're telling her this behavior is acceptable. When you ignore subtle disrespect, you don't pause the moment. You establish a precedent, and precedents compound. One small allowance becomes another, then another, until the dynamic shifts so far that correcting it feels impossible. And here's the chain reaction most men never see coming. When she disrespects you publicly and you let it pass, her friends notice. They don't interpret it as you being relaxed. They see a man who doesn't defend his own position. Their perception shifts first, then hers follows. Because once a woman realizes you'll tolerate being diminished in public, she understands she can do it in private as well. The tone changes, the effort declines, the attraction erodes, not suddenly, but permanently. High-value men don't respond to disrespect with anger or sarcasm. They don't try to embarrass her in return. They don't turn it into a scene. They respond immediately, calmly, and directly. One short sentence, no edge, no explanation, no emotional charge. Just a clear boundary stated. That response does something powerful. It resets the frame. It signals to her and to anyone watching that you respect yourself enough to stop the moment the line is crossed. This isn't about controlling her actions. It's about enforcing your standards, because respect isn't negotiated through patience. It isn't earned through endurance, and it isn't preserved through silence. Respect is enforced. Lens number 3. Never make your time freely available just because you like her. Plain. This is where most men undermine themselves before the relationship even has a chance to form. You assume availability shows interest. You think quick yeses demonstrate enthusiasm. You believe reshuffling your schedule makes you look invested. From her perspective, it reads very differently. When a man is always available, it doesn't communicate desire. It communicates a lack of structure. And women don't evaluate men in a vacuum. They evaluate the life that surrounds him. Here's the pattern. You meet a woman you're genuinely excited about. The chemistry feels strong. The attention feels promising. And because you don't want to lose the momentum, you begin doing something subtle but destructive. You cancel plans. You shift commitments. You keep your schedule open just in case. She texts. Dinner with friends disappears. Gym sessions get skipped. Your calendar becomes reactive instead of intentional. Not because you're careless, but because you're afraid of losing her interest. That fear is what she senses. Man, psychologically, a woman isn't only asking, "Does he like me?" She's asking, "Does this man have a life that can include me without falling apart?" When your time becomes an open buffet, she doesn't feel chosen. She feels prioritized at the cost of everything else, and ironically, that reduces attraction. Men believe scarcity pushes women away. In reality, the absence of structure repels them faster. A man who drops everything the moment she appears doesn't look committed. He looks ungrounded. And women don't trust men who aren't anchored to anything. This boundary isn't about playing hard to get. It's about protecting the foundation of your life. Because when your time loses value, so do you. A man who treats his time like currency is always in demand. Not because he's unavailable, not because he's playing games, but because his life already has direction before she ever enters it. When you protect your schedule, something powerful shifts in her mind. She stops seeing you as an option she can summon and starts seeing you as a man she has to meet halfway. Time creates anticipation when it isn't instantly accessible. That's the part most men get wrong. They believe saying no kills momentum. In reality, it sharpens it. When you don't respond to every reach immediately, you communicate self-control. And self-control is one of the clearest signals of maturity. Here's what this looks like in real life. She texts late. She wants to see you on impulse. but you've got an early morning, a workout, or a commitment you already made. The low-value move is abandoning your plans and rushing over, hoping it proves interest. The grounded move is simple, calm. No over-explaining, no justification spiral. You acknowledge her, but you don't reorganize your life around a momentary urge. That response does two things at once. It shows your time has value, and it makes the time you do give her feel deliberate, not convenient. There's an important distinction here. Being busy isn't attractive. Purpose is. A man with purpose doesn't need to manufacture scarcity. His schedule reflects priorities. His life has momentum, and women sense that difference immediately. When your time is protected, attraction has room to grow. When your time is limitless, attraction suffocates. You don't win by being constantly available. You win by being consistently grounded. Number 4. Never become her emotional dumping ground before she commits. This is one of the most dangerous traps men fall into because it disguises itself as connection. She opens up early, talks about her ex, the trauma, the chaos, family issues, how every man before you failed her. She cries on the phone, tells you she's never felt so understood, and you think, this must mean something. It feels intimate, it feels special, it feels like you're different, but emotional dumping isn't intimacy. It's recruitment. What's really happening is simple. She's testing how much emotional labor you're willing to carry before offering anything real in return. And most men volunteer without seeing the price. You listen for hours, you reassure her, you stay up late calming her down, you give advice, you absorb her emotional weight. You become steady, reliable, safe, and slowly, quietly, the frame shifts. You're no longer the man she desires. You're the man she stabilizes herself with. Here's the part that hurts most. Men confuse emotional access with emotional bonding. They think, she trusts me. What they don't see is that trust without investment doesn't build attraction. It builds utility. She leans on you, then turns around and gives her excitement, curiosity, and unpredictability to someone else. Not because you failed, but because you stepped into the role of therapist instead of partner. Masculine polarity collapses the moment you become her emotional container too early. Mystery fades, tension dissolves, desire flattens, and you can't reason your way out of that position. Once you're emotionally categorized as the safe one, it sticks. This boundary isn't about being cold, about pacing intimacy. Because when you carry her emotional weight before she chooses you, you give away your strongest leverage. Emblyon, emotional closeness is powerful, but only when it's mutual, only when it's earned. Emotional intimacy is currency. And like any currency, it loses value when it's given without investment. Here's the distinction most men never learn. You can be present without becoming responsible. You can listen without carrying the weight. You can care without dissolving into her emotional world. The issue isn't empathy. The issue is overextension. Blends when you rush to absorb her pain, repair her wounds, and regulate her emotions before there's commitment. You reverse the natural direction of a woman doesn't grow attached to the man who carries her. She grows attached to the man she invests in. That's how emotional attachment actually forms. Healthy emotional pacing looks different. You listen. You acknowledge. You remain grounded. But you don't jump into problem-solving mode. You don't become the late-night crisis line. You don't let her emotional waves dictate your availability or identity. This boundary protects masculine polarity. Polarity exists through tension, space, and mutual effort. It collapses when one person becomes the emotional anchor, while the other drifts without effort. Bangja's men often believe pulling back emotionally makes them appear distant or uncaring. In reality, it cleans the connection. It invites reciprocity. It gives her the space to step forward emotionally instead of leaning back into you. And that's the critical shift. A woman bonds with the man she invests in emotionally, not the one who carries her emotional weight for free. When she has to show up, when she has to contribute, when she has to regulate herself, attraction deepens on its own. This boundary doesn't block intimacy, it preserves it. Because intimacy that isn't earned doesn't create desire, it creates dependence, and dependence is the opposite of attraction. Number 5. Never panic when she pulls back. This is the moment where most men undo everything they did right before. Things felt good, the energy was there. The connection felt mutual. Then something changes, her replies slow. The warmth fades. The effort drops. And instead of staying grounded, you panic. That panic feels automatic. You sense the distance and assume something's wrong. Maybe she's stressed. Maybe you said the wrong thing. Maybe there's someone else. And without noticing, you do the one thing guaranteed to destroy attraction. You try harder while she does less. It usually plays out in 3 predictable mistakes. First, you fill the silence. She creates space and you rush to eliminate it. More texts, faster replies, extra check-ins. What you're really communicating is, I'm uncomfortable without your attention. Second, you try to reassure her. You offer emotional access on demand. You remind her you're there for anything. Every word quietly broadcasts fear, fear of losing her, fear of the connection slipping away. Third, you overcompensate. You plan more, compliment more, give more. You turn the volume up, hoping effort will restore what distance removed. But attraction doesn't work that way. From a power dynamic perspective, the moment you increase effort in response to withdrawal, the balance shifts. She holds the frame, you chase it, and once that imbalance locks in, desire suffocates. A woman can't miss a man who's constantly trying to close the distance. She can only miss what has space to be absent. Pulling back isn't always a test. Sometimes it's clarity forming, sometimes it's interest fading, sometimes it's simply life happening. But panic turns every possibility into the same ending. Loss of leverage, loss of attraction, loss of self-respect. Attraction never comes back because you try harder. It returns through absence. That's the paradox most men resist because it feels backward. You were taught that effort fixes things, that persistence proves worth, that showing up more stabilizes connection. But romantic attraction doesn't respond to effort. It responds to space. When you stop rewarding distance with increased attention, one of 2 things happens, and both outcomes serve you. If she's genuinely interested, she recalibrates. She notices the absence, the imbalance corrects itself. Her effort rises to meet yours. Consistency returns not because you chased it, but because you allowed it to emerge. If she doesn't return, then the truth was already there. Your boundary didn't cause the loss. It revealed it sooner. This is where men get emotionally stuck. They think if I pull back, I'll lose her. What they don't see is they were already losing themselves trying to keep her close. Never reward distance with effort. Effort given in response to withdrawal trains imbalance. It teaches her that she can decrease investment while you increase it. And once that lesson is learned, attraction doesn't recover. Absence does what effort never can. It restores polarity. It shifts control back to your side of the equation. It reminds her that access to you isn't automatic. And if she chooses not to step forward when space appears, then you didn't lose a woman who wanted you. You stopped chasing an illusion that required you to abandon your grounding. That's the quiet power of this boundary. It doesn't manipulate outcomes, it clarifies them. You didn't lose her. You stopped pursuing something that was never fully yours. What you've just learned isn't a set of dating tips. It's a system, 5 boundaries, 1 framework, 1 purpose, protecting your value before someone else decides what it's worth. Plant these boundaries aren't about controlling women. They're not about manipulation. And they're definitely not about becoming cold or detached. They exist for one reason only: to keep you from losing yourself while trying to keep someone else. When you control financial access, you protect leverage. When you shut down disrespect early, you protect dignity. When you guard your time, you protect direction. When you pace emotional intimacy, you protect polarity. When you stop chasing withdrawal, you protect self-respect. Together, they create a filter. Women drawn to structure, strength, and self-control will feel safer with you. Women who were only comfortable when you were overgiving, overavailable, and overinvested will quietly fade away. That's not loneliness. That's clarity. Boundaries don't make you harder to love. They make it possible for the right woman to love you without you shrinking to earn it. They ensure that when a woman chooses you, she's choosing the man you actually are, not the version that sacrifices himself just to be tolerated. And if there's one truth I want you to leave with, it's this: you don't gain power by demanding more from women. You gain power by requiring more from yourself. Bangians. If this resonated, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe. Stay here. This channel is for men who are done being confused, drained, and constantly questioning their worth. Like the video. Share it with the man who keeps giving too much and receiving too little. And leave a comment. Tell me which boundary hit you the hardest. This channel isn't here to comfort you. It's here to make sure you don't lose yourself.